which was, you sort of alluded to counter-organization a few times and said we might come back to it. And I was curious on two things. Well, first, actually, I want to applaud you again, like Tinson, for putting yourself in this situation, which I guess could probably also be dangerous. Yeah, I was wondering if like the information that you gain by being with the Minutemen, you hand off like as you work with them, and also what other like counter organization techniques you know.
I do not share the organization that I gather. I've worked with them at two levels, at the participant level and then at the organizational level in the office, doing administrative work, because there's a great discrepancy in the message that they send out to different levels, different parties, the way that's crafted. So I was interested in that. But I don't share any of the information I obtain with them with the counter organizers. And one thing I'll tell you that is extremely scary is that the Minutemen are by far more organized than the counter demonstrators in every way. And they make use of technology in remarkable ways. Ways that I've only actually seen as sophisticated as some of the people I know who like organize in Chiapas and stuff like that. So for those of us who do counter-protest work, like there was a whole Light Up the Night demonstration. I'm familiar with this, where people would drive their cars to the edge of the border and turn their car lights on so that the border would be illuminated. Now we're actually in the process of instituting large lights with the new fence. But what happened is a lot of us counter-organizers took large mirrors. And so what we did was we would just put the mirrors up, and it was silly, kind of, but somewhat effective. And you do things, and so there's also Water in the Desert Project, which is a Christian-based organization movement. So where you use your flexibility as an American citizen to pass over into Mexico and out of Mexico to keep water and food supplies in the desert for people who have to pass. But a lot of those aren't in conversation with each other. It would be nice to see a lot of those organizations work in concert to potentially be as effective as the Minutemen have been. Their effectiveness, unfortunately, has gained them greater legitimacy. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. In the news last summer, I heard that I read about, I think it's Shauna, her name, and another guy who were accused of killing a guy and his daughter, and they were too linked to the Minutemen. And I was wondering, like I guess the media always have to find something, and then that this guy was like he had drugs, so he had money in his house, and that's why they went to grab the money and everything. So I was wondering if this, it doesn't seem to, but how affected the Minutemen, or if it didn't at all, and the image that they have, and if they were actually Minutemen.
Right, I understand your question. The Minutemen take absolutely no legal responsibility if you are not on your muster. So they have what are known as musters. So those are they happen every single month at different times. And if you are not on your shift, on your muster, they are no longer legally binding to you. So if you happen to hang out in the camp and you perpetrate violence against other people, they're not legally liable for that. One person did offer cornflakes while on shift to somebody who was coming across because the individual was dehydrated and extremely hungry, and they were immediately discharged from the Minutemen. So you can't have any verbal physical contact with somebody who's attempting to cross. So they very cleverly set it up so that they're legally not responsible for people who do that. So I actually don't know of that case, and it varies state to state. And also, particularly say, for instance, if this happened in Texas and that individual was on the property of a private rancher, there's entirely different laws. That the King's Law, King's Castle Law applies.
No, it was in Arizona, and it was they actually trespassed their property, and then killed the owner of the property
Oh.
and his daughter.
Okay.
And they were associated with being Minutemen. So I just was wondering.
I'm not going to put that.
Any other questions? Are there any questions about what sanctuary status is or might mean?
I've
Putting my plug in there.
Are there locations within the city that become, like, it sounds silly, but like churches, fire stations,
Well,
places which people can go to escape?
The term is a pretty loose term, and it comes out of the 80s when churches were giving political asylum. So it has those roots, but as a ordinance, it pertains to the local police of that whole area.
So
Is my
that-
understanding. I mean, there's not like a standard.
Right. So if you were doing that in Amherst, would that have to go like to town meeting?
I've been very interested in this because, as you know, I live in Cambridge, which is the sanctuary city. And so I guess it's gone through the city council. And we've been sanctuary city for a long time. And effectively, it's what Jamie says. It means that the police cannot contact ICE. That's the basic, which is huge. Which just means that if they stop people for traffic violation or anything else, they can't, as they do here so regularly, turn them over to ICE. So the organizing is starting about that. Because the police chief in Cambridge is very sympathetic. I mean, I think he would be a very interesting advocate. You know, he may have other problems, but at least around this issue, he's been very good. I don't know. I'm very interested in being more involved in the organizing. So keep us all posted, because I think it's it's small, but it's a really good organizing project to do locally.
Yeah, it's one step with some real ramifications. And there's a mailing list that went by, and I think a lot of people signed up, but do you want to add your name to that? Norima?
You mentioned that like sanctuary city can be like binding or unbinding. If it's like what are you trying for, and then like if it's unbinding, I guess like what does it help then? Because there's still like in Springfield, there's a lot. It sounds like they want to be reporting it. So like if that's the case, then what is that going to change?
I mean, we're shooting for as much change as possible, so we're hoping for binding. And we're talking about this now. We're getting legal resources to shape this sort of what's this called? Example of an ordinance to this specific area, and mobilizing, getting more people, and then really launching this in the fall. It's really hard to start anything this time in the semester, so we're just sort of trying to get our feet on the ground and get a sense of the political landscape right now. So I think we're going to know a lot more starting in the fall about like specifics and like what exactly it's going to take. You know, it might take petitions from voters. It might take demonstrations. Who knows?
Speaking specifically to the political situation in Amherst, in 2007, the town meeting passed I guess it would be some amendment that would allow undocumented immigrants in the area to be able to vote, and that was passed by a vote of 154 to 22, which is huge. So that's definitely a promising sign. And there's also a member of the select board named Gerald Weiss, who in 2008 attempted to pass an ordinance that would make Amherst effectively a sanctuary city, and that was not passed. We're getting in contact with him, and we're going to talk to him and figure out more about what's going on there. But he's known for introducing ordinances and different proposals, so that's another step that we can take.
So a question in the back.
Yeah, so I know if the select board passes it, that it could become a binding ordinance, but if the town meeting passed it, would it become or do both of them have to pass it, or one or the other?
I'm not entirely sure on right now.
Do you know there's somebody on the faculty who's a member of town meeting? Wall, she was just elected there. We just learned this year. I think the town meeting, I don't know very much about local, but he might be an interesting place to start.